2010, just a little over 4 years ago, I think I left on the 3rd or something like that, I took a cross-cultural trip to India. Now, of course, in January of 2010, I was 300 and X amount of pounds and looked completely different than I did today, which you can imagine how I was getting a lot of looks, like they're probably thinking, who's that rich guy who eats way too much, you know? But I went to India. Now, India wasn't necessarily a place that I had ever dreamed of going or even cared to go, you know? I mean, I think my largest experience with India prior to that trip was, you know, I was somewhat interested in the life of Buddha. He's an interesting guy. And of course, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I mean, you know, and I would probably have put Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom just slightly above, you know, Buddha. But honestly, I honestly had never ever aspired or cared to go to India. But I figured if I'm going to go on a cross-cultural trip and pay the money to go on it, and it's required, well, I've been to Appalachia. That wasn't going to be an option. Mexico is someplace I could see myself going at some point in time, you know, or Rio de Janeiro or wherever else they might have had going on at that time. But India seemed like a place I would never, ever, ever get a chance to go to. It was the furthest place from home, and I said, you know what? If I'm going to go anywhere for a cross-cultural trip that I'm being forced to go on, I'm going to go to India. And so I went to India in 2010. Now, during my time in India, we spent much time going to see different places. In fact, we zigzagged across India. We started off, we flew into Bangalore, started off in a town right around there called, I forget what the name of it is. We were in Bangalore. Then we actually took a train to Kerala, which is on the western coast. And in Kerala, we stayed in Kottayam and went to a bunch of places there. Then we went to Madurai, I think it is, or one of those places in the center of South India, and then over to what is now considered Chennai, I think, or Madurai, well, it used to be called Madras, up in the east coast of India, and then we ended up in northern India, in New Delhi and Delhi, and then went to Agra to see the Taj Mahal. And let me tell you, that was an awesome way to end the trip. But honestly, I found northern India to be no more different than New York City. I mean, it's very like, you go into Delhi, and it's just like New York, you know? You've got all your vendors and all of this and all of that, and the hustle and bustle, and it's so fast-paced, and the people are kind of, they're still nicer than New York, but you know, but kind of colder than what you got in South India. In South India, was a completely different world. Now, if you look at your bulletin, you'll see a picture I took, actually, from the east coast of India, not too far away from where St. Thomas is supposedly buried, where he was supposedly martyred. And this is along the Bay of Bengal. Let me tell you, in January, the Bay of Bengal was about 78, 80 degrees. I cannot imagine what that's like at the peak season in the summer. You could probably boil fish in it, and they probably do. But one of the places I went to was there. And along the coastline were people, and you can see some of them in the picture, were people known as the Fisher people. And they were named the Fisher people because they would go out onto the beach, which they lived stone's throw away from it. They go out to the beach, catch whatever fish they could, and display it on the street and hope that people would buy the fish. So they were given the name the Fisher people. These people had absolutely nothing. When I say nothing, I mean absolutely nothing. The only thing they could claim was their own was a straw hut built by themselves along the edge of the shore, which you can imagine any big storm comes along, what's happening to them. And it's a one-room hut, probably no bigger than, if you square out to this railing, the altar space, probably that big. And they're fitting their entire family in that little space. No running water, certainly no income, no plumbing, or bathrooms, no kitchen, just one little space. And you ask, what do they eat? Well, probably some of the fish they catch, and whatever garbage is left for them to pick up and eat. You can look around in that picture, and while this is not the most disgusting image as some of the other ones I had, you can see the garbage just littered everywhere. These huts aren't even supposed to be there, and the government at any time can come by and just take them away. Now, one of the families invited us in, and invited me and my classmates into the hut, and there we were visiting and observing their home. Again, no bigger than the size of this area. We were not there to stay with them, to live as one of them, or even to try and help them. In fact, how could we really help them anyway? What resources did we even have to help them at that moment? When I read Matthew's account of Jesus returning to Galilee following John's being arrested, I think of these people. Land of Zebulun, land of Naphtali, on the road by the sea, across the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light. And for those who sat in the region and shadow of death, light has dawned. Jesus came to the poor. Jesus came to the downtrodden, to the ones who are hopeless, to the ones who are being oppressed by the systems of the world. Here we are, and on Christmas Day, my one daughter is lamenting that she didn't get what the other daughter had, and yet at the same time, these people are living in the situation they live in. On the one sense, in the one hand, I'm sitting there every night thanking God for the blessings that I've received. And these people don't have very many blessings to count. And yet, they welcomed me into their home. When I think of this passage, I think of the fisher people. It is to the fisher people that Jesus came. And it is to the fisher people that Jesus made his home. And he dwelt among them. It is the fisher people that Jesus first called to join him. It is the fisher people that Jesus first named his disciples. It is the fisher people who Jesus inspired to change the world. Come, Jesus said, and I will make you fish for people. Jesus gave them hope, and then taught them how to give hope to others. And Jesus is doing the same for us. Just as he called the fisher people and the tax collectors and the prostitutes and the lame and the blind and the sick and even the Roman centurions, so too Jesus is calling us. And while those people may be impoverished in one sense of the word poor, we as Americans and in the West in general are impoverished in a whole host of other senses. All we have to do is turn on reality television and see just how bankrupt and impoverished we really are. When our greatest aspiration is for everyone to look at us and love us more than anybody else. American Idol, for instance. Jesus is calling us to join him too. He is calling us to join him in becoming his fisher people. He is calling us to join him in fishing for people. And this goes beyond catchphrases and tracts and beating people over the head with the Bible. By the way, I don't know, how many of you fish? Fish are friends, by the way. I'm sorry. How many of you fish, right? Do you fish very well by throwing Bibles into the water? You catching fish that way? Because if so, I'm going to start trying. Got enough of them to throw. How many of us catch fish by throwing things into the water? That typically scares the fish away, right? No. You fish by luring the fish with something that looks hopeful, not scary. For instance, food. Jesus is calling us to join him in fishing for people. Not the easy way, but the right way. By building relationships with them, by expecting nothing out of them but who they are. And asking them to bring who they are to the table. Has Jesus given you hope in your life? Or more generically, has God given you hope in your life? Would you say that you're a people of hope or a people who feel hopeless? Some of you may be in different places. There's no right or wrong answer to that question. But if you have been given hope, if you're a person who has experienced hope, Jesus wants you to respond by giving hope and love to others so that they can experience hope. Now, what would hope be to the fisher people, for instance? Would it be a Bible and a tract and a cute prayer? Or would it be food? A decent place to live? Running water? The bathroom would be hope. Perhaps the people around them saying, "You're our brother and our sister, and we're not going to let you live like this." Perhaps that would be hope. While I cannot tell you how and to whom you are to provide such things, I can tell you that if you leave your nests, if you leave your preconceived notions and your self-definitions and your self-imposed limitations behind you, Christ will make you a fisher of people. And you will bring hope into the lives of the needy. Starting, ironically and profoundly, with your own. I can't tell you how many times I've gone on mission trips or been involved in mission, and you hear the people say, "Gee, I really came to help these people." But I found I actually ended up helping myself. I kind of found who I was. I think, Dawn, you can relate with that, right? Yeah. The truth is, we define ourselves in so many different ways. But only God can define who we are. And only living a life that God has called us to live will show us exactly who we are. And until we try to do that, we don't really know who we are or what we're capable of. So, answer the call. Follow Christ. And become fisher people who fish for people. For the light of the world has come and is shining on you. Answer the call. Amen. Gracious God, we are a people who have been called by you to do great things. A people who you are planning to do great things in and through. Lord, give us the courage to answer yes to your call.